again and welcome back. We're moving on now to week 14, part 3. So I'm starting on slide 18. The week 14, part 3 is a review of our lecture from last week, basically. So this is, I want to talk about conversation strategies and about essay development. So I'm going to move on to slide 19. So slide 19 is talking about essay development, and I'm going to reverse it. So actually I'm going to talk about the essay development first, and then I'm going to talk about conversation strategies second. So what I'd like to do is, first I want to talk about simple ways for how to make your essay better. So essentially, number one, the first thing you could do is to look at the questions that we have studied in class and to think about what questions are good to use in your interviews. So for the interviews that you had conducted before, you know, what questions were effective? What questions were good that you enjoyed answering yourself, for example, that were interesting for you? Because remember, if you choose interesting topics that are interesting to you, then your essay, your interviews will be much more interesting, number one. And number two, your essay writing will be easier because you enjoy it, and you enjoy the topic at least. And it'll be a better essay because you show how you feel about these subjects. It comes out in your writing. You can't fight it. So I know students who don't enjoy it because they usually have short, abrupt sentences. So show your style. You know, this is a really simple, good way for me to learn about you all. So that's first step. Number two, I so recommend that you brainstorm. I'm not sure if you remember what brainstorming is, but brainstorm is a compound noun. So your brain, thinking, and storm. So basically what it means is do some quick, rapid thinking about how you're going to structure your essay, what details you're going to use, and what details you're going to be discussing throughout the entire essay. If you structure it and you organize it to start, it makes the essay much easier to write. Much easier to write. Number three, please make sure you have 5 paragraphs. Remember that a paragraph is 10 sentences, so you can check yourself. Run through the paragraphs and make sure you have your introduction in each paragraph, you have 3 details in each paragraph, and you have a conclusion in each paragraph. Each of those is 2 sentences each. If you have questions, talk to me. You know, I'm just a little apprehensive that some students are still a little bit confused about exactly what these things are. Number 4. Now, number 4 actually was another common issue through the paragraphs that we did from week 12. And that was that lots of students skipped the conclusions. They didn't skip the conclusion paragraph, they skipped the conclusion sentences. So remember that even though you may feel like it's useless, it's not. I promise you, a conclusion is needed, it's necessary. And I remember, you know, when I was first, you know, as an undergrad, when I was in first year, second year, third year, fourth year, that, you know, you don't want to write the conclusion. Actually, it wasn't in university. I felt like that in elementary school. You should be teaching this in elementary school, definitely. You should be teaching basic paragraph form to the younger students, and I think you could teach essay to grade 6s. You should be able to. But anyways, this is where we want to go, right? We want students creating their own English, communicating using English. Because when we look at the differences between Korean EFL students, English is foreign language because we live in a country where Korean is the main language of communication. So English is a foreign language. compared with other countries like Finland and Sweden and places where they are also EFL students, their English is it's used to communicate much more. Whereas in Korea, we don't seem to focus on that aspect so much. I guess because we use English more for testing purposes, maybe? Anyways, sorry, I'm interested. I like this kind of stuff. So, moving back to our topic, which is our PowerPoint. Don't forget your conclusions in each of the paragraphs. And number 5, make certain you have 5 paragraphs, of which the first one is an introduction paragraph, detail 1, detail 2, detail 3 paragraphs, and your last paragraph is a conclusion paragraph. Okay, remember, an essay is not 5 detail paragraphs. No. What we want to do is we want to give a nice, clear, fluent expression of our feelings of what we're thinking about. 20. Moving on to slide 20 is I wanted to talk about the 5-paragraph essay. So don't forget, you need your 5 paragraphs. You must use all the rules that we have studied. You should review them. We're going to do a very general review shortly, but of course, time-wise, we're a little bit pressed for time, so it's going to be a very general overview of what we have studied and what you're expected to know. But of course, what we have studied in our lectures, what we've looked at, this is what you're responsible for. So if you're not sure, go back through, look through the papers, look through what we've studied, and be familiar. Another quick point that I should make is I noticed some students were using their own style to show songs and book titles and movie titles. But we have studied how to show book titles and movie titles and song titles. So, you know, we studied them in our grade 4 book. So if you forget, review. Please do, because you should be using these systematic formulas. They're global in English. You know, when you're writing in your Korean essays, if your professors ask you to follow a specific style, for them, of course, follow their style. But for me, in our class, I have shown you what I expect from you. So if you're not sure, again, contact me. Okay, so please remember, use all of the rules we've studied, use transition words other than first, second, third. If you really like first, second, third, you know, I'm not denying that they are used, but the issue that we have in our class is that students, you know, 80 to 90% of students use the same words. That's impossible. Impossible. You know, statistically, that is just weird. It's very robotic. So you should be using other transition words. If you really like first, second, third, mix them. Use firstly, secondly, thirdly. Oof, I don't like that one either. You could use firstly, next, then, finally, something like that. But mix it up anyways. Don't give me first, second, third. Don't give me firstly, secondly, thirdly. Again, blah. One other point about your transition words is I had some students who were writing at last or at the last. I think this is a translation, a direct translation from Korean. You can't use those in English. You can use last, comma, or lastly, comma, or finally, comma, but you cannot use at the end. You can't use at the last. You can't use at last. Please do use synonyms, and you can use antonyms as well. If you're not sure what those words mean, you should know what they mean, and you should be using them. And of course, you use adjectives. You know, adjectives express your feelings. It's packaged into the words. You know, is it wonderful, fantastic, lovely, amazing? Tell me how you feel about it. Of course, we should be using positive. We should be conveying positives. That was another issue that I had, is some students focused on negatives. I didn't like this teacher, I didn't like that the teacher did this, my elementary school teacher was too tough. But remember that your assignment was to talk about teachers that you liked. So your focus should be on aspects you liked, not the opposite. So please do be careful. Moving on now to slide 21. So slide 21, is your transition words. Dun, dun, dun. So I've given you lots of choices here, but if you want to use your own, you should, I suggest contact me. Ask me if it's okay. Because I've noticed that there are a number of sort of commonly used transition words in Korean, but actually in English they're not allowed. They're grammatically incorrect. So I wonder perhaps if maybe some teachers are teaching them, they don't know that they're actually wrong. So if you want to use words, that are other than these, you should talk to me just to make sure that they're okay. So we've got to start, for example, to begin with, next, then, also, finally, lastly, last, which we've already spoken about, in conclusion. Now you don't have to use these for every single step of the essay, but you should be definitely using them at least in detail 1, detail 2, detail 3 paragraphs. And if you wish to, you could use them, once in a while throughout your paragraphs, or in your conclusion paragraph as well. If it's too difficult to do it for every single sentence, and it also sounds unnatural. The other point I should make about your transition words is that when you use your transition words, they're an introduction to what's coming next, so they're an addition. So we add a comma to show it's a separate part of that particular paragraph. Moving on, I'm looking now at the conclusion paragraph slide, which is slide 22. So slide 22 is to make sure that everyone is really, really clear about your conclusions. So remember that not only should you be using a conclusion sentence or conclusion to conclusion sentences for each paragraph, but right at the end of your essay, you should have that nice paragraph 5. Once again, it should be 10 sentences. And again, your conclusion paragraph basically is to show it's complete. Okay, you're finishing it off. So you're putting the icing on the cake. You are putting a little chamgiram on the outside of the kimbap, so it looks nice and shiny and pretty. You need to restate one more time what the general essay was about and summarize all of the important information that you discussed. But of course, we're using synonyms, or you're moving the sentences around, right? So if you don't have the same sentence structure, that's another way to make it more interesting. It is similar to your introduction paragraph, your first paragraph, and it must be there. Look at your picture. If you had no bottom bun, your hands would get all greasy. We need it. So it must be at the end of your essay. And finally, for this slide, a very important point is that you cannot give new information. I felt that you were very good about that, actually. I don't think any student gave new information in their final paragraph. Most of the issues, I think, for you were about structure, basically, not following the structure very carefully. So, moving on now to our conversation strategies. Once again, conversation strategies are what you want to be using in conversation with people. So this is definitely spoken. Also, Your conversation strategies are what you're going to use for your speaking exam. So this is what we're looking for. These are really simple, very effective ways to keep conversation going. Because if you remember, or I'm sure you've experienced it sometime in your life, if you have a very long gap, you know, an empty space where no one's speaking in a conversation, it becomes uncomfortable. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to prevent that. So conversation strategies are really, really good for any speaking in English. So the first thing that I'm asking you to pay attention to is to show if you understand or not. If you don't understand, that's no problem. You know, that's not, I'm not going to, you know, be angry with you if you don't understand. We're human. That's normal. You know, sometimes we understand, sometimes we don't. But if you don't understand, we need to figure out why. Is it that you don't understand the topic? You don't understand the question? You don't understand what I said? Perhaps, you know, I didn't say it clearly, or there was a noise at the same time, so you couldn't hear clearly. So the first point is to show if you understand or not. So if you understand, you say, okay, I see. Or, yes, I understand, you know, very clearly. If you can't hear properly, just ask, could you repeat that? Or perhaps you don't understand at all. If you don't understand at all, I will ask you, do you understand? You say, I don't understand. Then I will find another way to express the same point. You could also ask again, could you repeat that, please? The simplest, you can just say, what? But remember that your tone is important. Because if you say it in a different tone, it conveys different meanings. You say, what? Or what? Or what? Different meanings are involved. So even if you're just using one word, try to use a polite tone. Next is, if you're not sure, ask some questions. I'm quite happy to answer your questions. So, do you mean I should answer in a paragraph? Is that right? Is that correct? You know, you can ask questions. Don't be shy. And this is actually a very good skill in interviews and in conversation. Someone asks you a question, ask them a question. This is how conversation is made. Now, when someone asks you a question, you have a short time to consider the question and then answer. So usually the maximum, the most time you can take is about 30 seconds before it becomes uncomfortable. So part of your job when you're answering anybody's questions is to do it quickly. So if it's taking, you know, essentially someone asks you a question, you can respond and you say, okay, just a minute please. Time is probably the most direct thing you could say, but it's incorrect. Grammatically, it's incorrect. The simplest in English is just a minute please, or just a second please. Just a moment please is also okay. But it shows that you have heard the question, you've understood the question, and you're thinking about it. So it gives you a little bit of time to think about your answer, and then you begin. But remember, it should be quite a short amount of time. Now, when you finish your interview or finish speaking with somebody, then you say to the people, okay, thank you, or it was nice to talk to you, have a good day, have a nice day. You don't say, bye. It's too abrupt and it's not very polite. So these are really effective for any speaking situation. If you want to, you can ask, am I finished? Am I done? And then, goodbye. Have a lovely vacation. Have a nice vacation. This is the simplest, most effective way to